I'd like to speak today about Dr. Tharoor, Shashi Tharoor, who, as some of you may know, is out on bail. He is charged with a grievous crime. The charge is abetment to suicide of his late wife, Sunanda Pushkar. And this relates to things which happened 6 years ago. In 2014, Dr. Tharoor's wife, Sunanda, they were staying in a five-star hotel, and her body was found. Now, she had previously tweeted certain things, she had said certain things, and one of those things was that she had been made a scapegoat. And the suggestion is that she had received money while not married to Dr. Tharoor. She was his girlfriend, acknowledged girlfriend. They got married later on, nothing wrong with that. But there had been questions raised as to money that she had received. And Dr. Tharoor said, well, it is sweat equity. She didn't put any money into this venture, but she did something to help that venture along. But sadly, the nature of that venture, and it had to do with the cricket, Indian private, the sort of the for-profit Indian cricket league, or IPL, or whatever it might be called. And the promoter of that, is a fugitive from Indian justice. But Tharoor himself, you see, he didn't receive the money. It was his girlfriend. It was sweat equity. Then he marries her. And then she dies mysteriously in a five-star hotel room. And, okay, well, maybe while they're staying in a five-star hotel, he has a house, he's a member of parliament. Well, maybe they're doing up the house. Or maybe, well, we don't know. We don't know. And, having stayed in five-star hotels in India, I have to say, they're not very good. You'd rather live in your own house. And Tharoor would have a well-appointed house, and the PWD, the CPWD people would have, done a very good job with the air conditioning and everything else. So it is peculiar. These things are peculiar. There are peculiar circumstances surrounding the case. Nevertheless, very few people who, like Dr. Tharoor, who have lived abroad for most of their professional life, or all of it in Tharoor's case, very few of them would feel that the charge of abetment to suicide, a criminal charge, something which carries long years in prison, they feel that it is inappropriate. There is nothing like that in English law, or in American law, or in the law of France, or other wealthy, advanced countries. But then, in India, we find all sorts of laws which are premised on the notion that women in India, wives, are in so much a weaker a position, that their position is so fundamentally insecure, that they are victims, or they can easily be turned into victims, even if they're not. It's like my mother was certainly not a victim. She got married. There was no question of dowry because both families are Brahmin. It is not a Brahmin custom to take dowry. But you see, the vulnerability of the woman is such that when a draconian anti-dowry legislation was brought in, my parents welcomed it. They had a daughter. They said, and other middle-class people, Brahmins, in other castes, where there had never been a custom of giving dowry because Brahmins own nothing. We have nothing. We're poor. And most people in India are poor. If you own land, then you can give a dowry. If you are in business, it's actually in your interest to give a large dowry because it advertises your creditworthiness. It shows that you're doing extremely well. But, for middle class India, a dowry, it didn't exist. It was foolish. But, as a case of Tardian mimetics, as a case of imitating people higher up the social scale, firstly, the bride price had gone for most of us because bride price, selling your daughters, that's that version, it sounds close to prostitution. So that was out of though some very high castes, Brahmin castes included, except bride price, and this is the plot of the novel Devdas by Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay. And then, but you see, let us get back to the fact that the middle class, we welcomed draconian anti-dowry legislation, even though it could be misapplied and it could end up hurting ordinary middle class people, as happened in the case of a Indian Doogie Howser. Doogie Howser is a character in an American TV series. He became a doctor at the age of 16 or whatever, and there's an Indian Doogie Howser, a gentleman from entrepreneur or from the state of Andhra Pradesh, from this marvelous group of people, or this class of people cutting across in a caste, people from Andhra Pradesh who've done extremely well, and have helped transform the economy of their own part of the world, but they've done extremely well in America and so on. So this is a real-life Doogie Howser who, at the age of 16 or 17, he became a doctor in America and he was doing extremely well. And he came back to India along with the rest of his family, say that his sister could get married. I'm sorry, his brother could get married. And then everybody is put into jail because the in-law says, they demanded dowry. And it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely. Another case of dowry injustice was where Arun Nehru, who's a cousin of Rajiv Gandhi, he was a senior cabinet minister. But then, he joined a coalition against Rajiv Gandhi, brought down Rajiv Gandhi. So Arun Nehru married his daughter, who's very beautiful, to the son, who's very handsome, of Ravi Tiku, the Kashmiri Brahmins. And Ravi Tiku was a billionaire. And then suddenly, must have been, I think there was some dispute as to which school the kid could go to, and it was just some fiction of a type that we can all understand. But then, Arun Nehru's daughter is saying, I'm being tortured and I'm being, driven to suicide because I won't pay a dowry. This is nonsense. Because, a guy who's a billionaire in dollars isn't going to torture a daughter-in-law of Arun Nehru, a senior Indian politician. It's stupid, it's nonsense. This is crazy nonsense. And, people like Madhu Kishwar, she's a feminist. She's a senior sort of an academic. But, she's a very courageous and well-spoken lady. But, she had to change her mind about legislation of this sort, which is predicated on the notion that women have no agency, that they're very powerless, that they have no power, that they could be driven to suicide. And if they do commit suicide, the presumption is they were driven to it, and that, moreover, it is a suicide of a particular sort. It is a protest against injustice. And that the law must say this person was driven to suicide because a crime had been committed against her, a crime of the most grievous, of the most reprehensible, repugnant type, and it is precisely this sort of repugnant crime that Dr. Tharoor stands accused of. And I think people, whether you admire Dr. Tharoor or you don't, no, I don't, because I think, because I read his novels and they were shit back in the 90s. On the other hand, it is a fact that I remember when his face came on the TV, I was with a lady, and she was absolutely fascinated. She started listening. And I said, that's an Indian guy. And she said, yeah, but where in India does he come from? He's South Indian, like me. I said, yes, but he's gorgeous. I said, yeah, well, look, he's just from the neighboring, he's like this is Tamil Nadu, he's from Kerala. Well, we're basically the same, we're Dravidians. And so she's kind of going, when I grew up, I look like him. I said, it's well known. It's like a metamorphosis. It's like, he started off looking like me. And then, after he hit the age of 35 or 40, he started to look like that. And she was gullible. But it did reconcile her to having sex with me. Because, it may be true for all I know that all South Indian people eventually end up looking like Dr. Shashi Tharoor. If they're treated well. And anyway, I'm sorry. So this is sexual jealousy. So this is sexual jealousy which I'm expressing. It's not because Tharoor is with the Congress Party. Let's face it, my family has always been pro-Congress. Well, my mother was. But, it's only when nothing to do with Sonia Gandhi, nothing to do with Ahmed Patel, nothing to do with Manmohan Singh. It's just, people like Ramla Thapar, getting a bit too full of themselves. And, Mani Shankar Iyer. Oh, that's a man I hate. God, as handsome as Tharoor is, Mani Shankar Iyer is repulsive. He looks like a gecko. He looks like a lizard. And he has, but of course he's, we have to say, Mani Shankar Iyer has helped Modi more than any other South Indian. Anyway, I'm sorry. So, but getting back to the story, we have Dr. Tharoor writing about Love Jihad in the Project Syndicate. Now, the fact is that India has, and always has, and will always will, very strict laws about a situation where girls are lured into marriage, they change their religion, then they are divorced, and then they are prostituted. This is we also have laws where there is no change in religion, but we have very, at least in Hinduism, there is by law, the thing against bigamy and so on. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does happen. It does happen, and it is disgusting. It is repugnant. But if we go back 100 years, and we look at not the laws but the way the laws were applied in New York, for example, in New York, if you were a masher is a guy who goes up to a young shop girl or young working class girl and tries to fascinate her with his and there's a form of marriage. And of course, in America at the time, just by moving state, you know, you effectively have the license for polygamy and so on. And that is why in America you had these very strict laws. Very strict laws. Firstly, mashers were just arrested, they're, given a good kicking, thrown in jail. And you have very strict laws about transporting people across state lines for though you may be married, though you may be in a perfectly genuine relationship. And India, you see, India is now coming into this type of freedom. Why? Because the only way India can progress is the way that Taiwan and South Korea and Japan and China and Bangladesh, shot ahead. It overtook Pakistan in per capita income, and it is now level pegging with India. And I have great admiration for the Bangladeshis. And though I'm Hindu, you may, I'm, my parents are Hindu, I'm a bad, sinful person who looks to Hinduism and to the God, the Creator. It's the same for all religions, but I look for forgiveness, I look for absolution, I look for help I look to grace as salvation, not to go to heaven, but just to inherit oblivion, and so my bad actions should die with me. And that is theodicy. If you can die, what more? And not have to suffer any more evil consequences of your stupidity and your laziness and your greed and so on and so forth. The fact that death exists is the only theodicy that a theist requires. And of course, but I am a Hindu and I hate the caste system. I hate it with a passion. And it is only because Modi is not a Brahmin. It is only for that reason that I like the BJP. Otherwise, I don't. I hated Atal Bihari Vajpayee, I met him. I listened to his speeches, and they were superb. And I just felt, Brahmin. We don't need Brahmins. We need people like Modi. We need people who, can do stuff, not make speeches. And Tharoor makes superb speeches, but he's not a Brahmin. And that's why I like him. He comes from a very aristocratic sort of caste, but he's very egalitarian. This is the other side of in aristocracy, based on achievement, based on excellence, epistemic excellence. This is the soul of the Malayali language. It has everything, The Ezu Tachan, the teacher, for me, that is the person that I revere. And I think the Malayalis, they have this, that is why you have different religions there. But they all love knowledge. They all love excellence, the pursuit of excellence. And it is very sad. It is very sad that Dr. Tharoor is being accused in the murder of his very beautiful, very capable wife. It is wrong. And I would point to another great wrong which has been highlighted by Patrick French. I have to say, Patrick French, he's an Englishman, probably about my age. Or, well, he looks younger than me because he's not fat. And this bloody English, I'm going to, I wanted to say cunt, but, because that's how we speak in London. But it's not how they speak in India. This fucking English bastard, yeah, he is so much superior to me in love of India. Nothing wrong with that. But that's actually a good thing. And Patrick French, he has written very, very, in a very scientific, in a very analytical manner, showing the two people, they were dentists, and they were very falsely accused of killing their own daughter. It was horrific. And of course, the Indian judiciary has upheld the view that Patrick French, in very simple English, he didn't use all sorts of Latin and Greek words. He just explained it in logical terms. And, there was he didn't say, oh, this is because the BJP or because of this party or that party. He said, this was a terrible miscarriage of justice. And he explained. And I hope that Patrick French will simply write the truth about Tharoor and say it is ridiculous for this man to be accused. It's completely false. Why on earth? This has been dragging on since 2014. And, there'll be a different government, it'll drag on for ever so long because, people will say, oh, no, we have to safeguard the rights of the poor women of India who, they're all... it's quite true that women in India are in a terrible position. This is something I know, it's something I feel. It was the, if it hadn't been for how horrible the condition of our mums, our sisters, our grannies, widowed grannies, and so on, it hadn't been for that, the Brahmins, they were very, very faithful to their, and other castes, they were very faithful to their ancestral religion. Loyalty was their highest, but they all wanted to change it, and they would go to jail, they would do anything to change, to achieve democracy, so as to completely change these rules, these crazy, crazy, crazy rules, which were... The reason that you had these rules is because you had different endogamous groups competing with each other to screw over and to make the lives of their women and their young people horrible through more and more exacting and more restrictive rules. We don't want that. That's wasteful competition. It's like foot binding in China. It just disappeared. The moment you can't have status competition on the basis of, oh, well, I can afford to bind the feet of my daughter so she can't work in the fields. This makes me better than my neighbor. No, foot binding is banned. You spend money instead on sending your daughter to study nuclear physics. And, in China, this is what happens. You had, the Wu experiment, Madame Wu, 1950s. Her experiment, the Wu experiment, it changes physics. It actually ends an open question in philosophy in the 1950s. She didn't get a Nobel Prize because she didn't have a penis. But, who cares? She didn't care. Anyway, all I'm saying is that it is sad that Shashi Tharoor is speaking out against Love Jihad, and he's recycling this nonsense, when the fact is that you have to have this reassurance that girls can go out of the village into factory dormitories. They can have affairs. So that's not a problem. They can get married. That's not a problem. But there are safeguards against any type of love jihad, whether it is by for a political reason, or whether it is simply motivated by the desire to turn the factory girl into a prostitute. And you need to really, and religion can be no defense. You have to beat these people just as the masher, the masher. Back 100 years ago, you can read about it in O. Henry, 120 years ago. I'm sorry, 140 years ago. I'm old. In 1900, a guy who was well dressed, spiffy, comes along to the factory girl who's barely earning enough to eat, or the shop girl. The shop girls were actually malnourished. And, oh, I love you, and they can talk nicely, and, but he's going to get her into prostitution. And that's a bad thing, because we don't need more prostitutes in India. We need girls working in factories, and some of those girls, there's a girl who went into a factory, a 15-year-old girl, 30, back in the 90s, so that's 35 years ago. She went into a factory. She came from a village in China. She went into a factory. She was at the age of 15 or whatever. And she now is a billionaire because the screen protector, she produces them. She's a billionaire. So that's what we want in India. And that's what we will get. Women are better than men. Well, men like me. And the men whom they're not better than, well, they make excellent husbands, and there's, they look after kids, and, when it comes to kids, we all start off as babies. And the really good men, and I know plenty of them, they are mums to their baby daughters, baby sons, and they are mums. They cook and they clean. Yes, they are dads because they're quite big, and but they've got the mum quality. Vatsalya. And that's a word that Malayalis like Dr. Tharoor, they understand that better than anybody else. It is the most Sanskritized, Malayalam is the most Sanskritized language. But it's also perfectly Dravidian language. And I may end by saying that Tharoor Sahib himself is a very handsome man. Why is he so handsome? Why am I so ugly and he's so handsome? I think the answer is because, you see, his class of people gave so much empowerment to women that they chose who would father their children. They had a matrilocal system of descent. So the men are competing in feats of strength and martial prowess and intellectual distinction and poetry and all this. It's marvelous. And of course, in being good looking. So that's why they're good looking, and that's why. But that isn't the reason I'm as ugly as shit. The reason I'm as ugly as shit is because I weigh 20 kilograms more than I ought to. I'm greedy. And if I were thin, and, I look okay. But I'm still grateful to Tharoor for firing up that particular lady. And who knows, maybe when I become Tharoor's age, I will look like him. It may happen, why not? Anyway, this is not a post about, this is I love Kerala. I love Malayali people, but they don't understand the all India perspective because their experience is, by their own effort, they made it very different from the rest of, certainly from the North India that I'm familiar with. Anyway,